penny for diagnosing these things.
Didn't they tell you? The house call is free for residential homeowners.
Was she getting a pass because of her former occupation?
No. No, she was really, really clearly an addict whenever they talked to her, and all she was getting a pass just because it's almost impossible to actually enforce a criminal protection order.
5 years and 11 months down the road, we'll install a new one for free,
And yet, his wife died last year. Just out of the blue. Were you here when that happened?
No.
Oh. Yeah, because he's pretty blown away by what I said. He didn't hear me on John and Ken.
Yeah.
But yeah, his wife went in the hospital and died the next day. It's really shitty. I envy. Yes, I've got one more break. Then I'll start Dark Secret Place.
Okay. Well, I was are you gonna be okay?
What?
Well, I mean, just in general.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially now that she's down for felony. There's no bail.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, like I say, we're still, I had to teach her how to check the LA inmate finder. Not normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out I do have one more break. One more break to talk about this. See our logo? This is my daughter. This is our chicken farm logo. Yeah, she'd be in there. She's exhausted today because it was the LA County Swimming Championships, and she had her event. So I don't blame her. She's pooped.
Can't see it, but it's there when you wake up and go to sleep. It's an active earthquake fault. And here in Southern California, we're all within 30 miles of one. At any moment, it will.
It's also, by the way, I didn't really mention this, but it is honestly, it really is the reason. Back in February, when my wife went in the hospital, it is the reason that I immediately, stopped drinking and started living better. And then I started doing this diet in June, and so now I can get in the pool and I can swim with her and all that. It really is, the motivation that I have is that I need to be alive when she's 18, and I can't fuck around with my health anymore. So that's why I have been. Whoa! I don't have a bumper. Do you have a bumper? I forgot a bumper. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place. I was kidding. We're not really starting Dark Secret Place yet. Just a final word, just sort of a general observation that I've made, not just since February, since I've been a de facto single dad, but since this event started, and someone who loves heroin more than this amazing 10-year-old daughter has just been the enemy of peace, and it doesn't understand that her 10-year-old daughter is terrified of her. Doesn't quite get that, and because this is sort of the thing that people say, constantly is well, it's not, just as long as you understand it's not her, it's the heroin or the meth or the fentanyl or whatever. But what it does is it exacerbates something that's already in your personality anyway. And so this is where, for my daughter and I, we're always like, well, you clearly didn't know her. And the helplessness that you feel, and this is the part that pisses me off, that I would have men understand about this, and you would suddenly get really, really pissed off about some of the scumbag bullies who take advantage of the fact that a restraining order or a protection order is made of paper. Like I say, as far as I can tell, the difference is that the protection order is one sheet of paper, okay, but the restraining order is many, so it's about an inch thick, but they still won't stop bullets. And so the impotence of family law when in regards to protecting the victim is pretty stark. It's pretty astounding. And I would say, and I've always asked this, is I don't understand why the second a restraining order is issued, why the state of California wouldn't waive a waiting period for a weapon. Because the one thing to level a playing field with a 90-pound woman with 3 kids is a shotgun. And and you can ask anyone in law enforcement, even my wife knew this when she had her mind, was that many times you hand a restraining order to a man and he goes bananas. So I've always suggested that, but I do know that the kind of people who go into the professional, the care industrial complex, the compassion industrial complex called DCFS or whatever, who are government mandated to care more about your kid than you're supposed to and all that, they'll sit there and cluck and shake their head and say, well, let's just hope it doesn't go to that. Yeah, whatever. I mean, how many dead women are there who were told, well, let's just hope it doesn't get to that? And then I do know this from Seattle, from Portland, from Los Angeles, that if a woman does go to a government official in DCFS and say, I need information on purchasing a weapon, they're going to say, well, I can't give you that. Well, I don't have that. And your options are, do you have somewhere to go? Can you go out of state? Can you go, like I said, can you go to the other side of the country? What about somebody like me or a woman, a poor woman in Sylmar or Lancaster or Compton or whatever, who says, no, I don't have the money and I like this house. I'm paying for it. I like my job. My kids like their school. I want to stay here. I just don't want a psychopath kicking the door down or waiting for me when I get home. I at least want the chance. I've learned not to rely on 911 or a piece of paper. Can I just get information on that? Where can I get information? And the answer in the Compassion Industrial Complex is, well, we just don't have that. I'm sure you can look online or whatever. I mean, I'm sorry, but for some people, and women know this more than I do, for all of you who have a broken picker and you picked the wrong dude, and you don't find out until he's handed a restraining order, then, pretty much apparently your option is pack the car and go and change your life, turn it upside down. So, I mean, it's such a failure, just such an absolute failure. And again, I'm not talking about, in general, just a woman without kids is vulnerable to some dirtbag. A good friend of mine in Modesto, our promotions director at Rock 104, for a long time, she lived with a guy who was literally on the personal bodyguard detail, state patrol of this one Western governor. The guy was a violent nut. And when she packed her bags and left, he followed her to Modesto. And they tried serving him, and the court in the state where he worked wouldn't do it because he knew too many people and all this. And she was a woman without kids, What about the women with kids? And I'm not talking about me. If it was just me, if there was no 10-year-old girl involved, if it was just me, and this was me dealing with a heroin-addicted former law enforcement officer wife who just couldn't see herself in the mirror enough to go to rehab and decided to love heroin more than me, believe me, this would be a far different conversation, and there would have been a news story a couple nights ago. But the victim is a 10-year-old girl. And I've now discovered that Los Angeles County is incapable of protecting her. If what they're going to do is hand me, the father of the victim, a pamphlet. And we're streaming on YouTube, by the way. Here, there's the pamphlet. There's the pamphlet. Victim's Bill of Rights. Report information, Victim's Bill of Rights. There you go. Yeah, there's paper. Made of trees, paper. Here's the thing. Why don't you print this on a frickin' tree? Okay? That would be a lot more useful than this. But then along comes the criminal protection order hyphen domestic violence handed to the perpetrator in court. So there's no doubt they received it. There's zero doubt. It's made of paper also, which is made of trees. And then I tripled down on that with a temporary restraining order. And so there you go. I will probably, I'm assuming there will be continuing chapters in this, and I don't mean, I mean, literally in the safety of myself and my daughter, because what I've discovered is that prosecutors in LA County are more concerned with simply getting an adjudication. They don't care about pursuing this as a felony. I don't know. As I'm not a deputy in LA County, but if it were me, if I were a LAPD guy, any agency in Los Angeles County, somebody kicks me in the face, you better pursue that as a felony, or else people might think you can get away with kicking you in the face. I mean, I thought they had more respect for the badge. I mean, where I come from, you punch, kick, whatever, an officer, that's a felony. They don't plea it down to a misdemeanor to just get the thing out of the way. It has to go as a felony. So I don't get it. I just don't get it. I'm also kind of over, the rules. I know what the rules are now because I've been places where there are no rules and I fit in fine and I made it out. I survived fine. So I've been to places with no rules. I'm still playing by the rules, but I can also play against the rules. I know how those work, and so to be continued as events warrant. Back in a minute. Yeah, the conclusion in Hong Kong. Well, don't hold your breath. We'll get to that and the rest of that Dark Secret Place stuff coming up right after this. On the Dark Secret Place, Brian Suits in here, streaming on YouTube. If you go to unsheepyourself.com, Jesus Christ, I'm brilliant for getting that URL. Unsheepyourself.com. How perfect. That is where we're streaming on YouTube. That's a redirect to YouTube TV. Back right after this, KFIM 640, more stimulating talk. Michael Chapin with the news. Hey, it's after 9. We're in safe harbor, so I can say Jesus Christ. Yeah, she is at the CDMR, which is in Linwood. The whatever, central detention, something or other. So there's a hearing on Monday, and still waiting for the prosecutor to get to me because I have to tell her, you can't offer fucking bail. She was out on bail and she assaulted a peace officer. Do you bail out someone who assaulted a cop on bail? Are you fucking retarded? And I will say that, by the way, in court. But I'll tell you what. This DCFS shit in Antelope Valley, these motherfuckers walked through my house, and this woman who wasn't country, she looked on the counter and we have all these eggs, and she said, why aren't those refrigerated? And I said, because they're fresh, they're from the chicken, they can be out for 30 days. The second you wash them, they have to go in the fridge, but they're fine. She didn't know that. And then she wouldn't walk back to the barn. She had to drive back because she looked out in our backyard and said, is there wildlife here? I'm like, yeah, no shit, lady. It's the Antelope Valley. You know, which is funny because if I got out of the car in Compton and I'm going to inspect a African-American household, I'm culturally inappropriate. You know what? I don't disagree with that. You know, I'd be wondering, you know, why are there plastic furniture covers on and all that? So, so I was given advice by somebody, a man on the inside, who said, look, when they ask, wait, how much time? Oh. So when they ask, are there firearms in the house? You just have to make sure that they're when they say are there firearms in the house, you just have to make sure there's no firearms in the house. But I was honorable about this, and I didn't want to get tripped up on that because this DCFS, these motherfuckers are on a crusade because they have failed minority populations so badly in Antelope Valley. You know, they have a body count in Antelope Valley, so they're trying to look effective. And I mean, are you kidding me? You know, the fact that they would see a white media personality involved. And that's why I said to the woman like 3 fucking times, hey, I called you. Hey, I called the sheriff's department. The Pixies. It's such a good song. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place. Welcome. It's our weekly look at the world melting down and the war on terror, some developments in Syria with ISIS, and the whole thing. Your host, Brian Suits. How you doing? Well, in fact, let's just get right. There we go. All right, it's the Dark Secret Place. Here until 11. Brian sits here. So I saw an update on CNN and Fox News that the Russians are now sort of adding more details in the very north of Russia, which is where you would test a nuclear-powered cruise missile. And you heard me right, nuclear-powered cruise missile. And there was a mishap. There was a mishap about 2 years ago, but it didn't involve a nuclear breach in this. And I know if you're a rational person, you're saying, whoa. Did I hear you right? I mean, the nuclear cruise missiles have been around for 30, 40 years, right? We started with the Harpoon and the Tomahawk in the 80s, right? And I said, no, nuclear powered cruise missile. It could have a nuclear warhead at the front end or at the center of gravity. Or it could have a little stick with a little banner that says bang that rolls out of it. But the takeaway here is, you heard me right, it's nuclear powered. and there was a mishap. There was a crash. 5 technicians, 5 engineers are dead. The Russians have said that they're going to be named heroes of Russia, and all this. And I know what you're saying. You're saying that sounds like the least practical thing of pretty much all time. Please tell me that no one has ever tried a nuclear-powered aircraft. Well, the United States did. The United States in the 50s took a Convair B-36 Peacemaker, and we put this gigantic, monstrous bomber, the largest bomber we've ever had. It's featured in the Jimmy Stewart movie Strategic Air Command, which is a masterpiece of Technicolor. And we put a nuclear reactor in the rear of the aircraft just as a flying experiment, just because the notion was, well, if we can make that work, then we can have an airborne deterrent that almost literally doesn't have to land for weeks. As long as you can pack enough food in there and you have 2 full replacement crews, then the aircraft can take off and it can fly around because it's nuclear powered. We tried it. We tried to make it work. We put a lot of money into it. But there were 2 problems with it. With a manned aircraft with nuclear power. Problem number 1, it had to have so much lead shielding that it was almost impractical as an airplane. That is, if you actually cared about the crew. There is problem 1A would be solved. What if you don't care about the crew? Well, then who cares about the lead shielding? Except the issue there is that you have a flight crew about 5 days into their month-long mission that are breaking out in skin cancer and lung cancer and all that. So it has to be shielded, right? So there's that. Problem number 2 is, well, okay, what if it crashes? What if if there's a mishap on takeoff, on touchdown? You know, we're not at war. It's supposed to deter a war, but what in the operational phase when you're training in the aircraft? What if you have a mishap then because the planes crash? And then reason number 3 was, who in the F would think of doing this? So we scrapped it. We got rid of the idea. The simple operational principle was this: a nuclear reactor is really nothing more than a way to make heat. Okay, thing 1. There's no magic in a nuclear reactor. It's a way to make heat. How does San Onofre work when it worked? Well, it heated up water, which was in a closed system. And then that heated up water outside the system, which made steam, and the steam turned a turbine, and the turbine made electricity. And then Philip Rivers got to watch video in San Diego in the study room or whatever. That's how electricity is made. Same with the nuclear submarine and all that. The nuclear power, the nuclear fuel only has to be enriched to about 10%. Okay, well, how do you put that in an airplane, make it work as a jet? Well, it makes heat, right? It makes heat. So it's real simple. You put a tiny nuclear reactor in an aircraft without shielding because you don't care, except for the ground crew. And what you do is you unleash it, you pull out the control rods as a throttle. First, you launch it into the air so it starts flying. But then as the reactor comes online, starts superheating, you're now forcing air into an intake, and it goes to an expansion chamber where it now becomes a jet. That's all a jet does, is it burns fuel, and that as the fuel expands, it shoots out the back. Well, instead of using fuel, you're using superheat. So you have a heat exchanger, so you have this closed nuclear reactor, and then it interacts with the air, but without poisoning it, right? So it's in this expansion chamber, it superheats, it shoots out the end. Bob's your uncle, you got a nuclear-powered cruise missile. Robert's your mother's brother, right? The Russians thought that the money move here would be to power a cruise missile so that it could loiter around the Pacific Ocean for months until the foreign policy crisis was over or whatever. I don't know. Or the Olympics were awarded to Moscow. Who knows? Anyway, we'll be back. I'll tell you more about this. And we'll get to Hong Kong because Hong Kong could trigger a worldwide recession. That'd be fun. It is the Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits in here until 11. KFI AM640. More stimulating talk. Yeah, subsonic. Though making it supersonic is just an engineering problem. It's just that And if the subsonic one, proved to be operationally practical, they would make a supersonic one, because the subsonic one can be detected and shot down. A supersonic one could not. And in reality, the concept of making it a cruise missile that's flying kind of low and slow is kind of a half measure. What they should do would be to make a hypersonic one that's trans-atmospheric. So as long as there's oxygen, at 100,000 feet, it's got something to suck in, and then superheat, and then shoot it out the back like a jet. So they're actually, probably in the future, there will be a similar propulsion system like that. But it's just that who wants to test it? Right now, yeah, not me. Could we make it work? We probably could. But again, the thing there would be, why would we? Why wouldn't you just use conventional propulsion for that? So anyway, the good news is, ladies, I'm gonna be single in 6 months. So that's probably the most fatalistic thing I can say.
Police have put up physical barriers between hundreds of demonstrators from a far-right group, which has been designated as a hate group, and counter-protesters from the Rose City Antifa group.
No, probably like 500 miles an hour.
Demonstration today, one person got a head injury as the groups clashed across the police, keeping the groups apart. Demonstrator Johnny Clemens says she's not a member of Antifa, but she is demonstrating against fascism.
Hey, by the way, this is YouTube, not Twitch. So this is backwards, right? Right there. Is that backwards on your screens?
Police are reminding the crowd that no permits have been granted to demonstrate in the street, and stepping off the sidewalk could get them arrested. And last report,
Is that backwards?
people continue to storm the streets of Hong Kong as protests
Really?
stretch into an 11th week there. ABC's Ian Bennell says tensions are rising now as the Chinese military has increased its presence near the border.
The protesters have 5 key demands, but they do all revolve around having more freedom and control and resisting what they see as Chinese interference in their own affairs. But for China, they fear that what this is really about
Interesting. It used to be. It shows up to me as backwards.
is precedent back home.
Protesters forced the closure of Hong Kong's airport more than
So I will.
at least 63 people are reported killed in a suicide bombing at a wedding in Kabul, Afghanistan. The Taliban behind the attack. In fact, they have condemned it. There have been no claims of responsibility since officials said the bombing has featured more than 180 other people, including children. You can drive on the freeway.
Where? What? On the camera? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been wearing a silicone, tactical ring. And my daughter today said, well, you won't be needing that for long. And she asked me to take it off. She's a really, really mature kid. She's done a lot of growing up in the last 6 months, which is why I let her fly a glider. But she really was. She just started competitive swimming in March, and she went to the local, then the regionals, and then today was in the LA County Championships up in Santa Clarita. So that was cool. She's the 8th best. There were like 5 heats, so there was like 45 girls who made it to the championships. So he was She's the 8th best backstroker in the 9 to 10 year range.
Low 80s for most of the inland metro areas. And then for the valleys, mid 80s to around 90, 90 to 95 for the IE, and then warmer a couple of days by a couple of degrees each day all the way into the week. Now 69 in Fountain Valley, 67 in Aliso Viejo, 66 in Hacienda Heights, 65 in Donna Beach. We leave local live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. I'm Michael Schiffman.
As we say in Russia, good.
Oh. Oh, I was queued up. Is my computer up? Because I wanted to play Homer Simpson. KFI AM. Oh, I'm Brian Suits on KFI. Thank you, John Frost. Jolly, hi, John Frost.
As we say in
Wait,
Russia,
is my computer still down? Wait, what are we doing? Are we good? We're good? Okay. Because I love Homer. Hang on.
as we say in Russia, goodbye in Russian.
Ah, there you go. And then here's Lisa Simpson.
A cooler filled with penises.
Yeah, that's a hilarious episode. So the deal is, we're talking about this Russian accident, and this is how they're playing it. They first of all are loath to admit that they're actually that they have accidents, but Putin publicly declared the existence of this missile almost 2 years ago, the Avangard missile almost 2 years ago. And in this hour-long video where he revealed all these fearsome Russian weapons that were being planned, the one that really kind of stood out was the missile that I described there right before the top of the hour, a nuclear-powered missile that had the capability of loitering or cruising around the world. And in their graphic, they showed it launched from northern Russia and then just cruising down the North Atlantic and taking a left at Iceland and coming down over the equator and going through the South Atlantic and taking a hard right around Tierra del Fuego and coming up into the Pacific Ocean. And that would only take, by the way, that would take maybe 12 hours or something. The capability of the missile is to sit there and fly a pre-programmed route for weeks or months. And the U.S. asks, yeah, but why would you want that? I mean, what capability does that give you? Is the idea there that we both have, one of us has launched the first strike, the other has launched the retaliatory strike, there's nothing left behind, but you have this, and then the submarines have launched their second strikes, the whole thing. So what would this be? This is the third strike. This is the ace up your sleeve in case your American enemy has absorbed a second strike and has reorganized and decided to mobilize and invade Russia. And then all of a sudden the super duper nuclear cruise missile hits, and in the graphic it was San Francisco. And here's the deal. It's a complete waste of your time to sit there and wonder, well, why would they want that? They have identified a need. Part of the need, by the way, is that you start wondering why they would need this. Because it's a mystery. We would never approve such a project. Like I said, we tried in the 50s. It could work, but then the Air Force and Convair and the Pentagon said, yeah, but why? You know, what does this serve? What is an aircraft that can fly for weeks? What purpose does it serve if we can just instead simply forward base aircraft so that they have the same function? So we put B-52s in Maine, we put them in Greenland or whatever, and they fly forward to what we call a fail-safe point, and in the event of nuclear exchange, they go forward to their targets. You know, why don't we just do that instead of making a nuclear aircraft fly? Well, for reasons known only to themselves, the Russians went with, go for it, make a cruise missile. So they've had now 2 mishaps that we know of. This is the second one. And now the most powerful countermeasure against Russian arrogance or silence is international embarrassment. And this is where a lot of people who don't understand Russians also didn't understand the Soviet Union, which was effectively run overwhelmingly by Russians. They have an Achilles heel. And it is, they really, really care what the world's, if they look like barbarians, they hate looking incompetent in the world press. It's a enormous insecurity that Russians have, that they look like they can't get things done. That is what drove their space program well beyond their punching weight, well beyond it. We didn't know it till later. And it's their fear of looking incompetent. And Chernobyl was the bottom of the barrel. They looked bumbling, they looked incompetent, they looked stupid. And the reason that they finally came out and said to the world, all right, look, we had an accident, it could happen anywhere, we're dealing with it, and the whole thing was because they were trying to put the fire out. I don't mean the Chernobyl fire, I mean the PR storm that happened, because they just looked stupid. So they finally said, yes, there was a tiny nuclear release out of Chernobyl. We're on it, don't worry. And if you haven't seen Chernobyl, by the way, on Netflix, TNT, Amazon, on a pay-per-view service near you, what's it? HBO. That's right. It's exceptional. I finally got to the point where I can rewatch it because I've forgotten a bunch of it. It's absolutely exceptional. And it not only is it exceptional, but every Russian source is pissed. They're pissed off because it's accurate. It's not some glorified version. So this cruise missile thing, there are a lot of Western analysts who are saying, well, surely now after their second accident, they're going to give it up. No, you're really missing one of the essential things about Russians, is that they want to show that they can make this work. Now, inside the Russian defense establishment, they're saying to each other, whose idea was this and how fast can we get him to accidentally fall out of a 8th-story balcony? Because this is a dumb, expensive idea. Because it's indefensible. I mean, literally, it's indefensible. It's going to fly around. It can be detected. What are we going to do? We're going to make 200 of these, and whoever our enemy is, the Chinese or the Americans, are going to shoot them down one by one because they're just bopping around. So what's the point of them if they can't deliver nuclear weapons? So anyway, they are now internationally embarrassed by it, and so you'll probably see them very quietly make this program go away, but they're not going to admit that. All right, speaking of nukes, we are modernizing ours. Real quickly, Bahrain has bought the Patriot PAC-3, which is the latest generation of the Raytheon Patriot missile. The Bahrainis are just like the Saudis. They are venomously, they have an extraordinary hatred towards the Iranians. The Iranians hate the Bahrainis as well. And mainly because of the way the Bahrain royal family treats Shia in Bahrain. But they have stepped up and paid for a very expensive missile system. Also, the U.S. Army is buying the Israeli Iron Dome system, which has so far a nearly 90% success rate. But it has a 90% success rate because it doesn't fire a missile at every incoming thing. It prioritizes what's likely to hit a populated area. So the Israelis take advantage of a geographical aspect of being next to Gaza to get this jacked up effectiveness rate. And the U.S. Army's buying Iron Dome thinking that that's just some organic thing, that it's 90% effective. But more on that when we come back. Also, who are the least likely countries to partner on a common tank? You said France and Germany. You would be absolutely correct. It is France and Germany. We'll get to that. And also, who are they not allowing in? That and more coming up. Dark Secret Place, hour number 3. Brian Seats in here till 11. KFI AM 640. More stimulating talk. Michael Chappé with the news. What have I missed?
The chase ended when the driver crashed into an apartment building this afternoon. The teen did have some injuries.
Hey,
Police in Portland say
hey.
at least 13 people have been arrested.
How come I can't see the
Protesters were facing off in
comments?
events today. One person was taken to a hospital. So check out your forecast and check your drive on the freeways next.
She'll get her. She had your long girl put dad on a pedestal. I know from experience you have each other. This will work out. I know how to feel that we should have. Oh, I can't see that. By the way, look at. I know, right? How about that? A leopard with backup lights. How about a leopard with three reverse gears? Look at this thing in my eye, by the way.
Dialysis patients like me will suffer the consequences. This is really life or death.
Here's Virginia Abitia, another dialysis patient.
If they pass ABU 290, what they're basically doing is they're just killing me slowly. If they take this away, I don't think I would be off.
Assembly Bill 290, sponsored by big insurance companies.
You misspelled herpes there, Einstein. Yeah, I don't know. I got to go to an optometrist.
AB 290, paid for by dialysis of life support.
Lows tonight near 60. We'll see some clouds in the morning. Bird off. Sunny highs deep into the 70s. Inland highs anywhere from the low 80s to mid 90s. Gonna stall in East LA on the 5.
It is on the northbound side at Dittman Avenue. A stall is blocking the right lane. Right now, traffic starting to load up back here to 710 as you approach where this disabled vehicle is taking up the slow lane. In the South LA area, northbound side of the 110 approaching the 10. You'll want to be cautious. Bathtub is reported in lane.
Have you seen a free bath? There's a bathtub in lanes.
So it starts to get messy back there at Adams Boulevard.
No, it does not itch.
Sponsored by choosemat.org.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm a huge believer of what I'm doing diet wise, because it's giving me more energy, and I feel better. I get up earlier. Ooh. At what? 2109?
Do you cover your lip when you laugh? Is your smile holding you back in life? That stops today. For nearly a decade, because
Well, it's not just no carbs, because I've done that
adults like you with grants to pay for parts
in the past.
help you achieve a better smile.
The main
Even with a
driver seems to be just eating once a day.
Approvals are fast. Go to cosmeticdentistrygrants.org. That's cosmeticdentistrygrants.org.
So I haven't been eating carbs for a long time.
Dentistrygrants.org.
But I did. I quit drinking beer in February. It's a big one, and I will drink, vodka tonics or those new hard seltzers. Beer is a big one. A pterygium? What is it? That sounds like a prehistoric reptile that flies.
My doctor
We're going to do a little English beat. I like starting bumpers in the middle of the song, because no one likes the very beginning. Okay, I'm going to start with the sax solo and save it for later.
Hey, it's Mo Kelly again. Every car comes with its own share of memories, and while you can't put a price on them, with TrueCar you can see how they might affect your value when you sell or trade it in. Here's what you do. Go to TrueCar, enter your license plate, and find out your car's value in real time. Answer a few questions, and you'll get a true cash offer in minutes, which you can take to a local certified dealer to trade in or cash out. So when you're ready to experience a better way to sell or trade in your car, check out TrueCar today.
Actually, we're going to play Brimful of Asha from Corner Shop.
Text and win access to our iHeartRadio Music Festival, plus $1,000 spending cash. Go solar in roofing American style with Semper Solaris. Visit SemperSolaris.com.
Live,
KFI AM 640.
local.
And a radio station.
KFI AM 640 Mars, stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret place. Brian Suits in here. Until 11 o'clock, we'll get to Hong Kong, but a subject near and dear to my heart is tanks. It's just tanks. Tanks. And as you recall, if you listened a couple of months ago, my friend Nicholas Moran, the chieftain from World of Tanks, joined us. Probably the only other guy who knows more about tanks on the earth is the technical advisor for World of Tanks, and a friend of mine. Well, so it's really hard to beat. Who has Germany savaged more with tanks than France? So imagine some of the jokes being made in NATO behind closed doors about the fact that the so-called European main battle tank is a consortium. It's a cooperation between France and Germany. And so, I mean, let the jokes fly. The only other country that has probably felt Germany's sting and their mastery of the tank would be Poland. So is Poland part of this? Well, here's the deal. It's clear that the service life extension, as it's called, the SLEPs, the service life extension programs of the French main battle tank, the Leclerc, spelled Leclerc, but the Leclerc, as well as the Germans' main battle tank, the Leopard 2A6, and they are both exceptional tanks. And here's the deal. France has no business making their own tank, but they do, because the French know that nothing can replace being French, and that's why the French have a tactical aircraft base. They make their own submarines. They could farm it out and save a lot of money. They could buy the F-35 and save a lot of money, but France is really more of an employment program than an actual nation in 2019. That's why Dassault makes the Rafale. They could have partnered with the Germans and the British, and they could have had the Typhoon. Whoops, I'm sorry. When the Luftwaffe flies it, it's called the Eurofighter. When the British fly it, it's called the Typhoon. You understand that the RAF version, the Typhoon, is named after a fighter bomber that sent many a Hun to Valhalla in Europe in 1944 and 45. So you understand it's a bit of a sensitive subject with the Germans to call their plane the Typhoon. They go with Eurofighter. Well, okay, so that's what happens when you get former enemies cooperating on a weapon system project. The French have just decided, let's just not try it. You know, let's make our own fighters. Let's make our own submarines. And the French have a pretty robust defense infrastructure and industry, very high employment, you know, through these programs. But they've come to a point where they've said, well, listen, you know, on the one hand, we're talking about what if we get a president more Trumpy than Trump? You know, this guy's talking publicly about walking out of NATO, right? What if Europe has to someday depend on itself? Let's say we don't fight each other. Let's make our own tank. Let's make a German-French tank with a delicious selection of meats and cheeses. And so this is a reality, the European main battle tank. Also probably a common, what are they calling it? Indirect fire system, meaning a common piece of artillery. Well, so and by the way, the Leopard 2A7, the 2 Alpha 7 is the latest iteration. Well, along comes Poland. And so if you're France and you're saying, yeah, no one's been savaged by panzers and with these Germans more than us. And Poland comes along and says, well, you're going to want to look back on September 1st, 1939, because before you guys were run over, the Germans did it to us. Well, so the idea here is that if there's going to be a common European defense, well, who's it going to be against? Liechtenstein? Well, no. Because even if NATO falls apart, there's going to be a natural magnetism between the center of European power, which would be Germany and France. But which way would they be looking? No, they'd be looking east. Well, what do you see when you look east? Well, you see Poland, and right on the other side of them is Russia. Is this rising threat that is pioneering conventional next generation armor, like the Russian T-14 tank, and updated artillery, probably some of the world's best artillery. So you have this third world economy with a first world military that's rebuilt the military. So now the Germans and French have been serious about this for a couple of years. It hasn't worked out well in the past, developing projects like this, but they're serious. And the Poles keep saying, hey, we want in. We want in on this. And this is how you know that France is really a jobs program more than a country. The main French objection, and by the way, the Poles do have world-class heavy industry. They have world-class armor expertise. They really do belong in the planning stages of a common European tank. But France's main objection to Polish participation, and with their money, by the way. So, we'd bring money and expertise. It would cost less. The main French objection is, well, that would mean less French people employed. So that's the reason. What the French are saying is, look, we will make, the tank, and then with our good friends, the Germans, and then you may purchase the tank, but you're not making the tank. This tank is going to be made in Germany and France, and we'll put some placards in Polish. You can pay for it in dollars. And it just goes, by the way, it is further proof of what I've said. It's never been written in the history books. You've never heard this. You've never learned this. George Marshall said it to Truman, and there was nobody recording it or taking notes. But NATO's primary purpose is not, it's publicly stated in 1947 and 48 to oppose Russian hegemony. The real reason in the aftermath of World War II that NATO was established was so that Germany and France are on the same side. It really, truly is. Having seen the Germans savage Europe twice in 30 years, and Americans having to cross the Atlantic and save everybody's bacon, the United States said, how do you keep these two? How do you keep these two from personal vendettas on the dodgeball court? Well, it's simple. Pick them both in the same team. So apparently it's stuck. But anyway, so that's the future of the European defense if NATO sticks together. And I would tell you, I think in about 10 years, NATO is not going to be recognizable. The 2019 NATO is not going to be 2029 NATO. But there will be a common French-German, the Le Bratwurst, or whatever you want to call it. You can make all the cultural jokes you want because they've opened up to it. Back in a minute, it is the Dark Secret Place. The brutality of Canadian troops in World War I is making Canadians in 2019 feel guilty. That and more coming up on KFI M640 More, stimulating talk. Michael Chappé with the news.
The LA City Attorney's Office and the General Services Department have apparently failed to keep workers safe from unsanitary conditions at LA City Hall.
The investigator found that there was trash and bodily fluids in the area, specifically urine and vomit, and that it was not cleaned as it should.
Urine and vomit.
Cal OSHA's Erica Monterosa says that the General Services was cited earlier this year in a different case involving a downtown LA police station. A new case has the city facing almost $2,000 in fines. All of the agencies are appealing the citations. Recently, some city and police employees become sick with typhoid and typhus. The new citations do not address those cases. Mother in Northern California is being investigated for child neglect after her found unresponsive at a campground near Mount Shasta. The baby and his 2-year-old sibling stayed in a vehicle Wednesday night while the mom and her companion stayed in a tent. Siskiyou County Sheriff says that the baby was not breathing when his mother found him Thursday morning. A deputy performed CPR on the baby, but he was...
I do make sense.
Tyson Foods is recalling more than 39,000 pounds of frozen chicken patties, which may contain what it calls extraneous matter. The Weaver brand chicken breast,
You know where
26 ounce.
the phrase "Bob's your uncle" goes, a big Canadian phrase, and my grandpa used to say it, and my nana up in Victoria. And "Bob's your uncle" is a phrase that goes back to Sir Robert Peel, and the deal is Scotland Yard and the modern London Metropolitan Police were reformed in, I got to go to the Wikipedia. I want to say like 1859 or a little earlier. Yeah, a little earlier. Yeah, he reformed Scotland Yard in 1857. And so that is why the new professional police officers of Scotland Yard were called bobbies, because Sir Robert Peel is the guy who brought forth a more professional police department. And no matter what they say, by the way, he did base a lot of it off of American policing in Boston and New York, but whatever. So anyway, they're called bobbies, and there was just an expression that it was a really, as he gained influence, for some reason people related to him were getting plum civil service positions in London government and in UK government, and so the expression just simply became, luck. A good way to say that you're lucky is to say that Bob's your uncle. Because if Bob is your uncle, you're going to get a job. If Sir Robert Peel was your uncle, you're going to get a job. So Bob's your uncle. It's the same as, whatever. I don't know. So the British Cockneys, in East London, they turn everything around. So instead of saying Bob's your uncle, they say Robert's your mother's brother, because it's the same thing. So that's Bob's your uncle. I've spent way too much time around the Brits, so. Yeah, I'm not gonna do a hipster mustache. I do need to shave this though, and keep this down. I like, and I do trim the stash.
Inland highs 80s to the mid-90s, and then we're going to warm up a couple of degrees each day in the midweek, and by Wednesday, the inland highs will top out the 90s all the way to 106. We leave local, live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. I'm Michael Schmidt.
They call it Assembly Bill 290. It's sponsored by big insurance companies. AB 290. Kidney dialysis patients in Germany.
At what? Oh, okay.
To pay for their medical care, jeopardizing access to the life-saving treatments they need to stay alive. Listen to dialysis patient Johnny Cooks.
If they cut this program off, dialysis patients like me will suffer the consequences. This is really life or death.
Here's Virginia Abitia, another dialysis patient.
If they pass AB 290, what they're basically doing is they're just killing me slowly. If they take this away, I don't think I would keep on.
Assembly Bill 290, sponsored by big insurance companies, endangers thousands of California's most vulnerable patients. Visit protectpatients.com.
I think he hung himself. I think he committed suicide. Sure, a lot of people wanted the guy dead. They should have killed him a year ago. But he wanted himself dead. He wanted himself dead as much or more than, whatever Bill Clinton wanted them dead. People forget that. They're like, are you somehow denying that he had a reason to live? He wanted to be dead more than Bill Clinton wanted him dead. He was not going to get pardoned or found innocent. Yeah, I'm going to play Hey Hey, What Can I Do? Which was the flip side of the immigrant song 45 in Australia. Otherwise, it never would have been released. Great song. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret Place. Brian sits in here till 11 o'clock with Hey Hey, What Can I Do? By the Led Zeppelins. These new kids out of England. So there we go. Otherwise, an obscure song that perhaps never would have come to light, except that it was the flip side of the immigrant song. The Zeppelin classic, The Immigrant Song. It was the flip side of the Immigrant Song in Australia. And the record came back to the United States, where it started getting airplay on Seattle's Best Rock, KISW, and became a huge hit. And other rock stations around the country were like, where'd you get that song? And they got copies of it. And the Led Zeppelins said, brilliant. We thought it was crap. We thought it was shite. But that's us told. I guess we'll just we'll say yes to it. One of my favorite Zeppelin songs. There you go. Hey Hey, What Can I Do? Is its correct title. All right. So I thought real brief. Some people are asking me on the YouTube, which we're still streaming at unsheepyourself.com. Unsheepyourself.com. And someone asked me about Jeffrey Epstein, and you know the deal. You know me and Occam's razor and Brian's razor and all that. Okay. Here's what people are losing their S about. Yes, of course, very powerful people had a reason to want him dead. And we're going to find this out, I think. And unless it's suppressed. And of course, the most powerful is an ex-president named Bill Clinton, who flew down to Pedophile Island and didn't take his Secret Service contingent on numerous occasions. And I mean, for what other reason would he go down there? Then former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, Clinton cabinet luminary Bill Richardson. I mean, just take a hard look at that guy. He ain't getting laid, okay, unless he goes to Pedophile Island. So, but there's one thing that people are forgetting about this, and it's that the person who wanted Jeffrey Epstein dead more than Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, you name it, the person who wanted Jeffrey Epstein dead more than anybody, in fact, more than everybody combined, was Jeffrey Epstein. You talk about crestfallen. This was a narcissist that should be, his picture should be in the dictionary when you look up narcissist. The money he spent on his personal appearance and that douchebag look in every single picture of the guy with that lantern jaw. And maybe as a young guy, he was a good-looking guy or whatever. And then he whatever he did to make money, apparently blackmail politicians and then invested or whatever. The guy was on top of the world. He had every bizarre sexual proclivity he had, especially the one about like being a sick F and being with young girls. He had it at his beck and call. He felt like he had every person in a position of power in New York. Never mind presidents. There are former elected officials in New York who probably should be changing their depends because he was shielded by them. Not our business, it's New York business, but this guy had the world by the scrot. And even when they came at him with the legit charges back in 2006 and 7 in Palm Beach, he skated. He did 1 year, and I did air fingers, by the way. And he dodged a bullet, and he's thinking, geez, look at that. He knows better than anyone else what he did, and he gets away with effectively a year of probation. You know, a fine, but who cares about a fine to a billionaire? And he escapes out of that 10 years ago, and he's saying, this is a done deal. I'm never going to be if I didn't get prosecuted for that, if the worst they could do was that weak plea deal, and I don't have to surrender my island and all that, then I'm bulletproof. And then that reporter in Miami starts doing her research and starts publishing very embarrassing, but factually true, a series of articles in Miami Herald. And then the federal government jumps in and he's arrested. And can you imagine the shock if you're him? And you're positive that you're just going to live out your life at the age of, what was he, 66, and he is going to just continue living the life that he had. They had their shot, they missed, they wounded him, they didn't kill him. You know, he had a year of probation or whatever. Then this actually happens. Then they raid his house and his office, and they find a safe full of sex tapes and blackmail material. He knows he's done. He knows it's done. It's over. So this life he had is suddenly gone. You know, I can't imagine what it would be as hard as becoming a billionaire overnight. Okay, can you imagine being a billionaire who now is a internationally disgraced weirdo who's never going to access that stuff again? So just keep in mind, before your conspiracy theories, before the cement cures on those, just remember that the number one guy that wanted Jeffrey Epstein dead was Jeffrey Epstein. And then now, secondly, look, it's pretty clear that if you want to kill yourself, you can kill yourself. Now, there was a guy, a former inmate in the New York Post quoted saying, no, there's just absolutely no way that you can kill yourself in that particular place. Well, look, I'm now seeing actual shots from the actual cells. They are bunk beds. They're not blocks of cement. The way they were described is like cast concrete, and there were no poles, or there was nothing to tie something around. Well, okay, there was. And that whatever he did with these sheets, effectively, as it turns out, they're not paper. They're not made of paper. They were actual cloth sheets. They're not supposed to be that strong, but what he clearly did was he looped them around, tied him into a knot, doubled him over, whatever, put his neck through, and found a post, was able to hang it on a post, and then he repeatedly just dropped himself until he was strangled. The hyphoid bone, you can mess around with your buddies and wrestle and break that bone. It doesn't take a lot of force to break that bone. It is obviously, it's a tell in most strangulations. There's no way to peacefully strangle someone. If they resist, they generally break that bone. And so I think, I'm sorry, but the obvious answer to me is just screaming out, hi, I'm an obvious answer here, dancing on your table, singing obvious days are here again. And I just don't hear people putting it that clearly, that the number one person who wanted Jeffrey Epstein dead was Jeffrey Epstein. And that explodes every conspiracy theory. I'm not denying that it would have been really advantageous for Bill Richardson and Bill Clinton to have the guy dead. They're going to be publicly embarrassed. And they probably, if I were them, I would have cracked open some of that Tito's vodka when Epstein was announced, when it was officially announced that two weekends ago, that Saturday morning, that he was dead. Except that Clinton's a disbarred lawyer. His wife is a lawyer, Bill Richardson. They all know that the civil cases go forward. And that in the civil cases, a lot of stuff that wouldn't be criminal evidence gets to be entered in there. So now what? I mean, if you believe that Epstein was killed as a criminal conspiracy, well, then the people in the civil cases against Epstein's estate, they better start getting knocked off one by one, because those cases, if it winds up being a single collective case, yeah, it's all going to be laid bare. So what are you going to say if they are not knocked off one by one? This stuff will get out, and it will be embarrassing to very powerful people. All right, we'll be back right after this. Hong Kong, it's in the news. That more coming up. Brian Suits here. Dark Seeker Place one last time here on a Saturday night. KFI AM 640. More stimulating talk. Michael Chappé with the news. What's the latest? What's that? Who's Nichols? Yeah, Margot the Raven is still around. And she still comes when we call her, but she is back with her parents. I didn't know this, but ravens have a really complex social structure where two parents will have a clutch of ravens, and sometimes, usually a male will grow up for about a year and then fly off, but they'll usually fly off to another phone pole, and sometimes the females will stick around with that original parenting family and help raise the next clutch of chicks. So it's interesting. They're very complex, but she'll sit on a roof or whatever, and I can call her and put food down, and she will come down and get the food. You know, it's pretty cool. It's really, really cool. But I'm still blown away by how smart they are. 'Cause we had her in our house for about 4 months, you know, and she hung out with the Australian Shepherd, and they play. She would hop up. They do that hop where they go they go like that, and she would quietly hop up to Wyatt where he was asleep, and she would poke him actually in the tail. She would bite his tail, and they have a really hard bite, but she would just try to get a reaction out of him by biting his tail, and it was pretty funny. But it was play. I mean, that is what it was. Oh wait, I didn't hear that. Okay, perfect. Yeah, it's Lucille. When she tires the dogs out, she still has energy, and she'll play hide and seek with the rooster. And so the rooster chased her around the barn, and then she turned around and did the dog challenge thing, and the rooster was serious. He was pissed, and then she hid. And then surprised him in that video. One of my favorite songs is What Is Life by George Harrison. Great song. My favorite Beatle, George Harrison. All right, I am cued. KFI AM 648, more stimulating talk. It is the Dark Secret place. Brian Suits in here one last time. And tomorrow night for Dark Secret, for Super Hyper Local Sunday, we may have a guest co-host and a really good Twitter follow. Bridget Phetasy, Phetasy, really good Twitter follow. A local Angelino and a writer and stand-up comic, just a funny person. A observer of local news, which is exactly what we want on Super Hyper Local Sunday. All right, so real quickly, my man on the ground in Hong Kong says that that today, starting like right around now, there was sort of a rest up of some of the protesters, and that there's supposed to be a return to the protests again today. These are not going away. The animus between the mainlanders, the Mandarin Chinese, and the Hong Kongers is growing, and this is something that the protesters in Hong Kong are not perhaps taking this into account in the big picture. That they're not garnering sympathy on the mainland in China. The Chinese population have been sufficiently cowed since 1949 into believing that collective peace and security is a virtue, and agitating for individual freedom is a vice, and you shouldn't do it. And besides, who wouldn't want what we have? Look how prosperous we are, and who would question authority that have brought us this exploding middle class? And what do these Hong Kongers want anyway? They don't have that sympathy of the mainlanders. And then, oh, by the way, most of the security services, even in Hong Kong now, are mainlanders. They're not Cantonese. They speak Chinese with a Mandarin accent. They clearly, can you imagine every law enforcement officer in California slowly being replaced by somebody from Mississippi in over a span of about 10 years? No native Californians. They come here for 10 years duty or 5 years duty or whatever. That's effectively what's happened. And one big difference between 1989 and Tiananmen Square, where of course the government of Deng Xiaoping was just so immediately affronted and insulted by this questioning of their authority, that they didn't give it long before they called out the army. Okay, and they didn't call out Beijing PD, riot police, or the Women's Auxiliary Balloon Corps. They went right to the army. And when the army initially failed because they were from the local army corps around Beijing, and they sounded like the protesters, they were related to the protesters. Well, the bottom line was they wouldn't pull the trigger. So they brought troops in from the western part of the country, and they would pull the trigger. So this is what they're missing in Hong Kong, is that one big structural change in China is the rise of the People's Armed Police, the PAP, which is a branch of the People's Liberation Army. They are a gendarmerie, just like in Italy. The Italian, the Carabinieri is a national police force, but it's a branch of the military. But they wear blue. But they are organized like a military unit, and they have law enforcement powers. We can never do that here in the U.S. In Canada, the RCMP are national police, but they're not part of the military. Well, in China, the People's Armed Police are part of the army. Okay, they can draft. There's 1.5 million of them, and you're not going to see the Chinese army rolling into Hong Kong. But the People's Armed Police have many, many branches, and intelligence gathering is a big one of them, big part of them. And the generally accepted scenario for how they make Hong Kong go away is probably underway right now. That a combination of facial recognition as well as actual people on the ground is probably going to lead to a situation where there's going to be disarray in Hong Kong one day. There's going to be social media upheaval because people are going to be reporting hundreds of disappearances, because the People's Armed Police are, in all likelihood, as we speak, already in plain clothes all over Hong Kong, probably have penetrated the freedom movement. certainly they have on social media, and they have all the surveillance video you need to make arrests. And I mean, for the Chinese to make arrests, for an American to make an arrest, but for the Chinese to make an arrest, because they want the leaders and they want them gone, and they want them to never come back. And if they wind up in a labor camp for 10 years, that's how it works. But what they're sensing is that there's actually a lot of people in Hong Kong who just want to be left alone. They don't want to be extradited, but they're not going to take to the streets and protest. And there's a lot of people in Hong Kong who will take to the streets and protest. Those are the ones that the Chinese are saying, okay, listen, we're not going to roll tanks in there. We're not going to roll green tanks down Hong Kong streets. But we will roll wheeled vehicles painted white, marked with the People's Armed Police symbol, and we're going to assert police power, and we're going to look like police who are trying to restore order, and we're going to make the demonstrators look unreasonable. And they're doing a good job themselves. They captured 2 undercover police earlier this week at that Hong Kong airport 4-day thing, but from the inside, they're going to do what's called black bagging, which they've been doing for a couple of years, where if you blog too negatively about Beijing, and then you go on TV, go on BBC, and go on Twitter and all that, and you're just not a friend of Beijing, you just might find yourself black bagged, and you're going to wind up in a courtroom in Beijing, or closer to Hong Kong, like Shenzhen or something. And guess what? They've now got you. You're going to be found guilty of agitation against the state and promoting disarray and all that stuff. So Beijing doesn't want a repeat of Tiananmen just simply because it's bad business, not because they give a crap about people's lives or civil rights or anything. But that at this point, Beijing is also aware that the other reason to not do that is because that might precipitate a worldwide recession. But when it comes down to order versus prosperity, a lot of Americans, investment types, are making that mistake. They're picking the wrong one. Beijing will choose order over prosperity every single time, like they will this time. All right, Super Hyperlocal Sunday is tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, a wrap-up of everything that happened here on the weekend here in Los Angeles. So thanks to Franz and Victor and Michael Chapin. We'll see you back here next Saturday for the Dark Secret Place, and tomorrow night for Super Hyperlocal Sunday. Brian Suits out. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk. All right, I'm down to 4% on the battery. So